Hello and welcome to another episode of the Royal Record here on GB News. I'm Cameron Walker, GB News' Royal Correspondent.
And I'm Svar Nanan-Sen, Royal Editor of gbnews.com.
And this week we're going to be not talking about the royal news of the week, but we're going to be delving into a particular topic. And we thought we would explore Prince Harry's relationship with the military. This week, we thought we would explore Prince Harry and his relationship with the British Army, his career in the British Army, as well as his relationship with veterans from across the world and launching the Invictus Games in 2014. He did launch it with the help of the Royal Foundation. At the time, it was the Royal Foundation of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry, and of course in the British Army for 10 years or so. But Svar, before we get to the controversies when it comes to the messy exit of Harry and Meghan from the royal family, let's think back to a rather lost Prince Harry, I think it's fair to say. In his late teens, early 20s, he's left Eton College, not particularly academic. He's not going to be king, because that's Prince William's job. So what does he do?
Yeah, so in 2005, Prince Harry enrolled in the military. He served the way many members of the royal family do in the military. But for Harry, it was clearly a huge passion and a place where he felt he could be himself. You know, he said whenever he speaks about his time in the army, what comes across is that he felt like he was just a normal soldier. He obviously had a real appetite to throw himself into numerous different roles there. And yet it always comes across that being with fellow soldiers was a really happy time for him.
Yeah, and I think it showed that he kind of found his calling in a way. And as you say, he was always the one when he was on public engagements. He was the friendly Prince Harry, really down to earth, would chat to anybody. He was part of the club, part of a team. He wasn't this prince in a tower being overly protected by A, protection officers, and B, private secretaries telling him what to do, or his family telling him what to do. He could just be one of the lads, Captain Wales, as eventually he was called, given no special treatment. And then it got to the kind of the early 2000s, 2007, 2008. And there was a lot of, I think, talk behind the scenes as to whether it would be safe for Prince Harry at the time, you know, second, third in line to the throne, for him to go on the front line in Afghanistan. Prince William was not allowed to do that because he was future king. There was a question mark over Prince Harry. It was eventually decided that yes, but there would be a media blackout and nobody would know he was there. So all of the British media, all of the international media who followed the royal family were told that Prince Harry was going on to the front line in Afghanistan. And the agreement was that there's a media blackout on this. No one is going to run the story for Prince Harry's safety. In exchange for, when he does finish the tour, then we can talk about it and you'll be given loads of access to pictures or copy or whatever. Unfortunately for Prince Harry, an Australian magazine published that he was serving on the front line, and he had to regrettably be pulled out early from that tour for his own safety. And he speaks about it in his memoir, Spare, just how angry he was that had happened. And I think that was perhaps one of the nails in the coffin in terms of Prince Harry's relationship with the media, understandably so. He was incredibly frustrated, didn't want to leave his team. But it was when he was being flown back that he was accompanying wounded and also coffins of soldiers who had been killed in Afghanistan, which sparked in his mind the Invictus. But Svar, what do you make of Harry's kind of feelings, but being pulled out of that first tour of Afghanistan? Must have been so hard for him.
Yeah, I mean, Harry's on record as saying it was something that infuriated him and it deeply hurt him as well. He was eventually deployed, and Harry did do another tour. But as you said, I think that moment was a real damaging blow in his relationship with the media. Obviously, that the Australian magazine betrayed the royal family's trust in reporting that. And since he's kind of stepped away from the army, he's always held veterans and their rehabilitation as one of his key goals. His work with the Invictus Games is something that obviously started in 2014 when he was a working member of the royal family, and
Yeah.
is ongoing to this day, even though he has stepped away from the royal family. So it's something that he's very passionate about. We've seen him try and shine a spotlight on it with his Heart of Invictus documentary for Netflix. And I think it's something that we'll see Harry campaign on, throughout his life.
I think it gave Prince Harry a purpose, the military, which I think is why he was so frustrated being pulled out. I think it was slightly perhaps unfair of him to brand all media with the same brush when it was one Australian magazine. All the tabloids, which he's clearly at war with at the moment in the courts, had nothing to do with it. They all kept the media blackout. It was none of the UK media who did that. It was an Australian publication, so there wasn't much he could do. But of course, you can see the frustration. But then he kind of took it on the chin, perhaps the wrong words, but he was determined to go back. And what he did from 2012 is serve a second tour of Afghanistan. But before he did that, he had to train as a helicopter pilot, an Apache gunner. And then he did get to go back to Afghanistan, and he got to serve the full tour. So he did get to serve the full second tour. But we found out a lot more detail about that second tour from his memoir, Spare. But before we talk about Spare, there's an amazing clip of Prince Harry doing a media interview in Afghanistan, and he's chatting to whoever's interviewing him, and then some alarm goes off where he's basically being scrambled to get into the helicopter and start shooting at things. And he I don't know if you've seen the clip, but he stands off the chair, rips the microphone off and just runs off into the distance, and it's like a real Top Gun Prince Harry moment. And I think a lot of people found that, oh, Prince Harry, what a lad, that kind of guy. But what a contrast from that and the loved military Prince Harry to where we got to, where having met Meghan Markle, having had tensions with the royal family, having had more tensions with the media, and then eventually stepping back. It's just such a contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that moment, it did capture that Harry felt he was just an everyday soldier, and okay, this alarm's going off, I need to spring into action. And then we contrast that with some of the interviews he's done since leaving the royal family, and it's almost the exact opposite in terms of in one institution he was part of the team, and then in these interviews since leaving the royal family, it's very much like he was the man outside and the outsider, and very, very critical of all the things or of many things that were going on within the royal family. So it's a big contrast, but it's over a period of years, and people can change, their priorities can change, and although he's still very passionate about the military and veterans, his perspective on the royal family has changed so much in that time.
Yeah, I think it certainly has, and I think it's interesting to see veterans and British Army officials talk about Prince Harry, if they do. I think when you see veterans give Invictus interviews, clearly they're going to be quite praising of Prince Harry. When you speak to members of the British Armed Forces, funnily enough, Prince Harry tends to not come up, because they'll be talking about the official work of the royal family with the pomp and pageantry of various events. But there is reportedly some veterans who are quite unhappy about how Prince Harry's conducted himself over the last few years. But then a couple of weeks ago, he received the Pat Tillman Memorial Award for kind of the service he had given to others when it comes to supporting military veterans with the Invictus Games. But the mother of Pat Tillman, who's a serving soldier, US soldier who died in Afghanistan in 2004, only 27 years old, she didn't appear too happy with Prince Harry receiving that award, did she?
Yeah, so Pat Tillman was an NFL footballer who gave up a lucrative career. He could have made millions of dollars. He gave that up after 9/11 to enroll in the army. He did a tour of Iraq and later Afghanistan, where he was killed in 2004. And then since then, the Pat Tillman Memorial Award has been used to recognise huge acts of service to the military community. So Prince Harry was nominated for that award this year by ESPN, and Mary Tillman, Pat Tillman's mother, spoke out and said, I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. So really strong criticism of Harry there, and from someone within the military community who also does work with veterans. Mary Tillman made her feelings clear that Prince Harry wasn't a worthy recipient in her eyes. And sources close to Harry said that he was stunned by the level of backlash that he received after this SB's nomination. There was also a petition that was signed by over 70,000 people calling for a U-turn and for the decision to award Prince Harry the award to be reversed.
Well, I mean, let's just look back at Prince Harry's career and in the royal family military, good bits and bad bits. He served 2 tours of Afghanistan. He continues to wounded veterans with the Invictus Games. He's patron of Scotty's Little Soldiers, a charity here in the UK which supports children who've lost a parent through military service. But then what he's done, according to, some would see it this way, having spoken to military veterans myself about this particular point, in his memoir Spare, he talks about the killing of 25 Taliban fighters when he was serving those tours of Afghanistan. And he describes them as chess pieces on a board. And that didn't sit right with some in the military community, because not only did some accuse him of bragging about the number of kills he had, something which you don't really do in the military community because each kill is a life, and it's not something to perhaps celebrate, but also it creates this sense of danger, not only for his personal safety, because he of Islamic extremists or Taliban fighters who basically want his head on a stick, or other British soldiers or other American soldiers. It makes them more of a target because an ex-British soldier has now bragged about killing 25 British Taliban fighters. So that was a really controversial thing to put in his memoir.
Yeah, I think it did damage his relationship with the military community in some aspects. The full quote here is, "They were chess pieces removed from the board, bad taken away before they could kill goods." But it was widely condemned for, one, dehumanizing the enemy and comparing them to chess pieces, and two, the bragging around kill counts, and he goes on in Spare to say he killed 25 Taliban fighters. And the other thing about his comments in Spare was that it could be seen as exploitative. I mean, this is something that hundreds of thousands of soldiers go through, and to actually put it in a book that is then going to be publicized to the masses, I don't think that's sat right with the military community at all as well.
What I think we need to remember is that perhaps Prince Harry quite naively would have given a lot of these facts to a ghostwriter, because it was a ghostwriter who wrote Prince Harry's memoir. He didn't write it. He would have given the facts. So he probably naively said to the ghostwriter, I killed probably 25 Taliban fighters, and that's probably what he gave. I don't know. We would obviously don't know the exact details of what was given. But then the ghostwriter clearly knows how to sell a book, knows how to write a book, knows how to keep people engaged. And he probably would have written the chess piece line, or made it sound more sensationalist than perhaps Prince Harry told the ghostwriter. But unfortunately, it's Prince Harry who signs off on this book. It's his name on the cover. He's the one who's written it, even though he did have a ghostwriter helping. But I think it's just an interesting point that he's clearly given the go-ahead, and he also read the audio version of the audiobook, so he clearly knew what was coming, and he let that happen.
Yeah. Moving on to more positive stuff with Prince Harry, though, when he was nominated for this Pat Tillman Award, ESPN, a sports broadcaster in the US, they cited his work with Invictus Games over the last decade, and the important role that's played within the military community. Jake Wood, a former Pat Tillman Award recipient, said, "He's a royal prince. There are 100 different things he could have done with his life after service in the British Armed Forces, but he's chosen to dedicate a big portion of his post-military life to helping veterans." And I think that is worth remembering, that Harry he had so many different avenues available to him, and he has chosen to focus on helping the military community and veterans as much as possible.
It's his passion, isn't it? I think it absolutely is his passion, and the Invictus Games is something he's really dedicated to, and he's going to continue to be dedicated to. We've just had we're going to have the Winter Games in Canada.
Yep, in Vancouver in 2025.
In 2025, and I'm sure he will come back to the UK and do various events with perhaps Team GB. He's obviously got Scotty's Little Soldiers, as we've already mentioned. And it's like, it's a situation where if he was still a working member of the royal family, all of us would be praising him beyond belief with the amount of, work he's done and championing veterans, putting their cause, their concerns in the spotlight for others to then dissect. And I think it's something which perhaps a lot of people are not giving him credit for, purely because of all the kind of problems that have happened over the last 4 years or so. But I think it'll be really interesting to hear from or see how other members of the royal family think about Prince Harry's work with the Invictus. A lot of the criticism I get online sometimes when talking about Prince Harry and the Invictus Games is remembering how it launched, being part of the Royal Foundation with the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, now Prince and Princess of Wales, of course. But then it is Prince Harry who's taken it off of the Royal Foundation and made it its own kind of separate organisation that he is very much heading up.
Thanks for watching or listening this week, and don't forget you can keep up to date with all the latest royal news and analysis by signing up to the GB News Royal newsletter or by visiting gbnews.com/royal.
Until next week, goodbye.
Goodbye.